Hi, everybody. It's Tamika Shelby
And Carolyn Burke.
And Brenda Dowell.
and we are coming to you today because we are so passionate about a body of work that we've been studying, and that is The Medical Medium by Anthony William. We love this stuff. This is like lighting us up so much, and we wanted to share it with you. So if you're interested in this, in health and wellness, or if you have some kind of medical issue that you've been struggling with, this is a video that you don't want to miss. So what we want to do today is talk about our own experiences and what led us to it, and also some strategies for healing and some ideas about how your food can support you. So Carolyn and I were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and she was saying, I feel like I'm swallowing this information. That's a kind of funny way to say it, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it's some people, when they start to hear about it, they just think, it's just another medical fad, or it's like some kind of diet or something like that. And it really is so unique. And for all of us, in all of our years of holistic health and studying wellness, have not experienced anything like this, either reading about something like this or in our own bodies. So that's what we're here to do today, is share a little bit about this with you. And if you don't know Brenda is our anatomy instructor at David Tree School of Yoga, and she teaches a lot of different things. And Carolyn and I are both the co-founders of David Tree School of Yoga. So some of you may have watched my blog on my website about the medical medium, which I got involved in the work a year ago in November. And it was so inspiring to me because I was having a lot of health challenges. I was having extreme, my asthma was getting worse. After my hormones were changing, everything was getting worse. And I was doing everything I could possibly imagine in my practices and in my body and my food choices. Even I thought I was doing everything I could. And so that's what made me get into this Anthony Williams work. And if you've never heard about him before, he is actually, he started doing this channeling, although he doesn't call it channeling. There's a voice, a high level, he calls it spirit, that speaks to him and gives him information about people's detailed information about people's actual health challenges. And it's unlike anything in the medical community, but also unlike really a lot in the natural health community. That's what was so shocking to me. So at age 4, he diagnosed his grandmother with lung cancer, to the shock of his whole family. And he could barely get the words out. He didn't know what it meant, but he was able to diagnose her. And then he goes on and throughout his life to diagnose all kinds of people with things that the medical industry or the medical community doesn't recognize or know about. So that's kind of the background of all of this. And I just wanted to say that we are on day 4. Women, are we on day 4? Day 4 of our second round of the Medical Medium 28-day cleanse. So that's one of the things you can do. You don't have to do that if it doesn't speak to you. This body of work is for anybody, and you can make tiny changes or you can make big changes. It really depends on the person. Everybody's body is really different. So I want to say before we go further that we are not affiliated with Anthony William in any sort of way. So we don't receive any money from him or anything like that. And so this is just really us wanting to share the message. Before we do anything else, let's take a moment to close our eyes and feel our breath in our body. And to honor this beautiful body that you've been born into. You've been gifted with this precious body, and it loves you so much. And for this moment, remind yourself of that eternal love affair that you have for this entire lifetime. You get to be in this love with this beautiful body. And take a deep breath in all the way to the top. And then let it out with a sigh. Very nice. Okay, so let's talk more about this. I mentioned why I got into the medical medium. I forgot to mention psoriasis, also because I've had psoriasis for quite a while, and I've had asthma since I was 4 years old. So I was pretty sure that it was something bigger than all of what I could understand in all of my seeking in my health community. It was something that was missing, something I didn't know about, and then along came this information. So how about you guys? What got you guys interested in this stuff?
I can speak that when I read, so Tamika introduced me to the material and I started reading the book, and right away I was like, whoa, really interested because of the information about toxic heavy metals. And my father died from a terminal illness when I was in my early 20s. And so which was also quite a rare illness, and somewhat linked to Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's runs very deep in my family as well. So all my grandmother and her siblings died of Alzheimer's. So I was like, this is really critical information for me in terms of my health, because I understand now the impact of toxic heavy metals in our system. So I was like, I'm really, really interested to learn more. Also, I was wanting to have a little bit more energy. I was feeling sluggish and not very focused, wondered if it was hormonal, what was going on. So that's what inspired me to get into doing the cleanse the first time that I did it. And then after that, it just started to become a part of my life.
So cool. How about you, Bea?
Same. Tamika introduced me to the medical medium, and I started to read the book, and I was just so resonant with what he was saying, and it just made so much sense to me. And so that really encouraged me to dive in. And I was working with hip pain that I have for over 2 years, that knowing what I know about the body and anatomy, and I couldn't fix it no matter what I did or how I did anything. And so when I started to work with this, it was like, oh my goodness, like 95% of any hip pain I have is gone. And it's from, I believe, from lessening the inflammation in my joints through this cleanse.
Whoa, that's pretty cool, guys. That's really cool. If you didn't connect with any of those illnesses, let me read you some of the illnesses that this protocol actually really deals with. Although I don't know about you guys, but I find that pretty much everything anyone has, whether it's Alzheimer's on one end, which has been linked to heavy metals, right? Mercury in particular, let's say.
And aluminum, I think, too.
And aluminum, right. All the way to like acne that we think is hormonal, which is actually probably not that. So, but let me read you the list. ADHD, adrenal fatigue, autism, autoimmune disease, candida, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, diabetes, digestive disorders. That includes SIBO and all the stuff that we hear about our guts and gut health, Epstein-Barr virus, fibromyalgia, leaky gut syndrome, lupus, Lyme disease, menopausal symptoms. So this includes everything that we women go through, like hot flashes or intense cravings, or people start to have, some people say, oh, I have like geriatric pain in my joints, but we think of it as something that has to be there, which it could be a virus. So the whole, what else, guys? Menopausal symptoms like vaginal dryness. What else?
Hot flashes is what I thought of, but you already said that.
Yeah.
Brain fog. Brain fog is a big one.
Fog.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It may not be what we think it is, guys. Migraines, multiple sclerosis, PTSD, rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid disorders, vertigo, tinnitus, and many, many more. So that's just a little sample. Can you guys think of anything else that lack of energy is one that you said, Carolyn, that some people, and I get this, I totally understand, have to use coffee to wake up and wine at night to wind down. And so those two extremes in the body, there's that isn't natural, that we need these things to cope with life. And that doesn't mean I haven't been addicted to coffee before. And I sure drank my share of alcohol in my lifetime, even though I don't drink now. So I get it. That is not a judgment on anyone. But if you're in that situation where you're like, coffee is God or wine is God at the end of the day, this is a really good stuff to check out. Anything else you guys can think of?
It covers most of what I
know.
Did you say diabetes? Yeah, you said diabetes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the things that's really cool about medical medium work, the medical medium work, is the unforgiving 4. And those 4 things that he says are causing most of our health problems, and really as a society crippling us from moving ahead in any positive way, is the viral explosion. So these are viruses that people aren't typically talking about, toxic heavy metals, radiation, and DDT. So the viral explosion, when I was reading this book, I was really shocked because the first main chapter was about Epstein-Barr. And if you don't know about that, it's a disease that like very few people get diagnosed with. You don't hear about it all the time. In fact, when I tell people about Epstein-Barr, a lot of them say, what is that? I've never heard of that before. But it actually, out of 300 and something million Americans, 200 and something million people have some stage of Epstein-Barr. So it's a virus. And what it does a lot of times is it sits and hides it dormant in the body somewhere. And if you think about a woman, let's say, because we were talking about menopause, let's say even a child, it can sit dormant in the body for their whole lifetime, like for not their whole lifetime, for like 40 years, it sits dormant. And then when there's a change or a crisis or a trauma, or let's say it just hits that menopause or perimenopause stage, it comes out and then it takes over. So that's why a lot of the stuff, and it's not just that, it's not just, it combines with other things like DDT, but it combines with other things to attack. So Epstein-Barr can sit in the thyroid. It can sit in your low back area, in the liver, and then move into your low back after a trauma. This is fascinating stuff, but this is stuff that we don't usually hear about. Now, there are over 60 varieties of Epstein-Barr itself. So doctors don't test for those 60 varieties. I don't know, but I think there is a test for one variety. I think that's what he would say. But you can't go to the doctor and say, I think I have Epstein-Barr, and then they say, no, you don't, but you actually could have it. It's just not one of the varieties that medical science knows about. And the other one he talks about that's pretty big is shingles. And shingles, there's over 30 varieties of shingles viruses that have no physical symptoms on the skin. There's no visible shingles, but still these viruses are affecting people's health. So that's just a touch of the viral explosion. And then there's cofactors like strep, works with some of these viruses, and that can kind of take over. And as well, the herpes virus, not the ones that we've been talking about, but ones that haven't been discovered yet. According to him, there's herpes viruses that we don't even know about. It's not just herpes 1 and 2, it's all these other ones. Before you get overwhelmed, though, there are things that we can do to minimize our risk of this and take down the symptoms. Okay, so that's the viral explosion. That's number 1 of 4, the unforgiving 4. The second one is toxic heavy metals.
So for toxic heavy metals, I guess we all are pretty aware now that we have heavy metals there's metals in our environment that we are taking into our system. So it's not too shocking to think environmental pollutants, that there's aluminum that you put your food in, perhaps, that you wrap your food in your aluminum foil and take it to work in a sandwich or whatever. That is heavy metal. So sorry, something coming on the screen there. And so we're quite aware of that. And even people know now about mercury fillings and that they're quite dangerous in terms of leaching the heavy metals into our bodies. But what was so shocking to me is to find out from the medical medium that the heavy metals, actually, we inherit it as well. So when we talk about something like mercury, which is one of the most serious heavy metals, it's likely in many, many, many of our bodies because it's been inherited from perhaps 3,000 years ago, and it gets passed down and down and down through your familial line. So there used to be mercury in hats, in those felt hats that people, that's why they called them the Mad Hatter, because they started to go crazy because of the mercury in the hat. So our grandparents, grandparents, all the way back would have been interacting with these metals because they didn't know. Even mercury was used as an elixir, a healing elixir for medical purposes. They would give you a shot of mercury if you were sick. So then people stopped sending their husbands and wives to the doctors because they would come home and start to basically go crazy and die. So what it showed me is that it's not just what we're currently taking into our environment, but that there's mercury and heavy metals that we've kind of been processed through generations. And that, unfortunately, as Tamika was saying, with the viral load, it gets stored into parts of our brain, parts of our liver, and then it feeds the viruses, the heavy metals. So doing the heavy metal detox cleanse or smoothie has been a way for me to really feel like, okay, I'm addressing these toxic heavy metals that are in the environment or that are inside my body.
That's amazing.
I know it can feel overwhelming and it can feel a little bit negative in a sense, but I feel more power to us if we know this information.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome to share all of that. The third one is radiation.
And radiation, the fallouts from like Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Chernobyl, they say that it's going to take over 1,000 years for that radiation to actually fall to the earth. So we're only getting pieces of it over the course of our lifetime, obviously. And so we're constantly bombarded by the radiation in the air. And that, of course, then leaks into the food chain and contaminates the water sources in the food chain, which we then take in even more radiation. And then there's also the direct getting x-rays for broken bones or whatever. And many years ago, even in shoe stores, they used to have you put your foot into an x-ray machine so they could see what your foot was shaped like, because they didn't know that there was toxic effects of long-term exposure to radiation. And then, as Carolyn had said, also the familial line carries radiation from thousands and thousands of years ago, and we inherit that if we're not addressing it. And we're constantly bombarded with radiation throughout our systems, just simply being alive and breathing and eating and drinking, everything that gets contaminated, from the air. And the other thing, so I have to look at this, it says that radiation, Anthony says that radiation is the leading cause of cancer and so many other autoimmune and immunity diseases that cause a degradation in our own health systems. And that radiation acts as a trigger for almost every ailment that human beings have.
Whoa.
Like that's, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about second guessing, like the x-rays that you get when you go to the dentist. Obviously, if you have a broken bone, you may need to do that. But it makes me think anyway.
Empower yourself. Yeah. Make conscious choice. Yeah. When it's really necessary.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. And the last one of the unforgiving four is DDT. And this one was really interesting to me because he describes DDT as being the cause of psoriasis. And there being, I think it was, don't quote me, but I think it was like 100 different expressions of psoriasis. So they all go in cycles. Because if you ever notice, some people will say, oh, it's gone and now it's back and I'm not doing anything different. Well, they move in cycles out of the body. The psoriasis does. But the DDT, it's banned, but it's the same thing as the heavy metals and the radiation. We're inheriting the effects of the DDT that we've experienced. We're inheriting that from the 1940s when they used to go around and spray communities with DDT. And similar to the story about the elixir of the mercury, they would put DDT on an apple and eat the apple to demonstrate to people that it was a health benefit, that there was it was like an additive for your health regime. So they were actually having people ingest it. And then there's pictures and there's stories about kids soaping themselves from head to toe in the DDT that these machines were coming around and spraying with. And the woman, I forget her name right now, but she called out DDT, and she was totally discredited and called hysterical. Now she's since been vindicated for all of that, and then it's been banned. But the thing is, we're getting this from our from our parents and our grandparents and their grandparents. Like, it comes down the line. So DDT is another one of the unforgiving four. And then as one of you guys said, they all work with each other, unfortunately, and they compound the effects of these mystery illnesses or just difficult illnesses that we can get. So, that sounds so bad, but why are we so happy then?
Because I think knowledge is power, right? Yeah. Knowledge feels to me like, okay, I can handle this because I've got more information.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've said this so many times, but I've traveled the world. Literally, my yoga career has allowed me to travel all kinds of places all over this globe. And everywhere I've gone, I've went to see local healers, usually in the natural community, and looked for answers. And I haven't found anyone that had these answers. And when I was reading it, I opened up the book that night, and it sat on my shelf for months. It was Dolphin Melody, check her out on Instagram, that I actually was looking for psoriasis solutions, as I do every few years. Is there anything different that I don't have to put all these chemicals on myself every day? It just never felt right. And I started to read the book. And I was just going to read it to fall asleep, and I stayed up all night reading it because I cried. I was like, okay, nobody has ever said this, and it makes sense. And then Brenda, when I talked to you about some of the stuff, you were like, because her anatomy and physiology understanding and chemistry and the way that the body works and all the body systems work together, Brenda was like, this makes sense from a physiological perspective. Yes. Yeah. And then
especially the excitement. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
Say it, yeah.
I was just going to say, especially the diabetes stuff, it was like, oh my God, this makes total sense to what is happening in the body. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. So that's why we're still smiling, is because even though it sounds really negative, it's very, very empowering. And sometimes it takes for people to really have a crisis to be willing to make a big change or look at things differently. And for me, that was, I wouldn't say necessarily true, because I was always looking for the health thing. I've been vegetarian or vegan off and on since I was a child. So I thought, and in my vegan times, I thought I was doing everything right, but I wasn't doing these specific things in specific ways to be able to heal my body. And you don't have to be vegan to take on the medical medium protocols. I mean, he loves a plant-based diet because it's less taxing on the liver. So any of you that have some of these issues where your body can't process, like allergens, toxins, all of that, the liver does all the work. So meat has a lot of fat in it. There's a lot of animal fat in it. If you don't have a problem with that, then go to town. Or you can do other things. If meat's really important to you, you can do other things to help with the different toxins and viruses. But yeah, so did I finish my loop of my story there? Yeah. That's why
you were crying and you read it all night because it was so empowering, right?
I was. And I stayed up all night reading it. And then I was like, you guys. I feel so much better. And maybe that's where I'll start with, is that the positive results. What have we seen, you guys? I guess, so I read the book in November and started some supplements, but I didn't start really doing the protocols until January after our Malta trip. the thing is, I want to say before we talk more about that, is that you guys can do any level of this when you're ready to do it, or none of it, if it doesn't speak to you, obviously. But don't feel like, oh my God, this is too intimidating, I can't do any of it. You just do one thing, because that's how each of us started, by just doing one little thing. Because once you start following reading all his books and his podcasts, it's a lot of stuff. Like no one person could actually do it all. But one of the things that I found after I couldn't do the whole 28-day cleanse the first time, because my symptoms got worse. So you guys know this from a cleanse, right? It gets worse before it gets better. But my asthma was really trying to get rid of these toxins in my body. So I had to do a gentler version of it for the end. I won't say that I didn't do it at all, but I had to back off of it. And again, Dolphin Melody, check her out on Instagram. It was the same way, but she was literally in bed and unable to get up, and had tried all kinds of things, and then was bedridden, young woman. I don't know how old she is, probably 20s, early 20s. I don't know. And then was able to function and have a job and live her life, and all through these protocols. And for me, I wasn't able to walk up the mountain anymore. I couldn't do any kind of physical activity. And for someone that's been important for me to do physical activity, that was devastating. I just thought, and I was really getting accepting of it. The other thing, Brenda, you mentioned to me the other day that you pointed out that you noticed. I just have to break from talking. What did you notice?
From my perspective, your relationship with your body and loving and accepting exactly where you are and not fighting it the whole way through. It's just what I have noticed is the transformation in that relationship for you over the last year. It's been amazing.
Yes. Thank you. Because it's not so much about fixing everything, is it? It's about loving where we are. And the fact that everyone was telling me my body was attacking itself, which it is not. Autoimmune does not mean your body is attacking yourself. If you think about all these unforgiving your body is freaking fighting day and night for you. It is on your side. It loves you so much. And I think that is what got me so excited. It was like a whole new perspective, is like, this body is like not faulty, or it's not like I have some genetic defect, or it's not, it was just I was so grateful to have that understanding. So thank you for pointing that out, Brenda. Yeah. Okay. And how about you guys with positive effects from the cleanse or just the living this way?
Do you want me to go, Brenda?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I noticed it was quite interesting because I was curious. I kind of started end of February with the celery juice, and I was getting curious, like, I wonder what it would be like to go a whole month without eating meat, because I was a meat eater. And what I found was about once or twice, I didn't make a lot of meat, but once or twice a month, I would feel like I needed meat to give me energy, and I'd get really, really low energy. In reading the book, I realized that probably I had adrenal fatigue. And so I'm one of those people that needs to eat food frequently. And so I started to kind of tune into that and do what he was saying. And, but mainly when I went on the cleanse, the 28-day cleanse the first time, I was like, I wonder what it'll be like not to eat meat. Basically now I did the cleanse and I never went back. I have become a vegetarian. And I am the person you would never, ever think of as becoming a vegetarian. You can ask these two. So it was shocking for me. But I had more energy than I've ever had before. And I was a plant-based diet, and the fruit and the vegetables was giving me everything I needed in terms of the protein. In fact, I had more energy, and what I noticed was more focus. So I was had been feeling foggy, and especially during the cleanse, I was like razor sharp focus. I was like, okay, I got to get this done, and less emotional. And not that I wasn't emotional, it's that I was feeling the emotions and moving through them, I would say, quicker. These guys would definitely attest to that. So that instead of getting bogged down and feeling like, oh, I'm so sad about this situation, and it would take days or hours, this would be like, okay, this happened. Yep. All right. I got to get back to work. So that's what I noticed.
Yeah.
And gone up and down for sure. And it's like, it's not like I don't still have those strong feelings and reactions, which I do. But I feel less pulled, I'd say, by the emotions in my life.
And he would say that's from the brain, right? Like the emotions from the metals, either metals in the brain or like a lot of our emotional challenges, like for all of us, can be like depression, anxiety, but also feeling kind of off or emotionally vulnerable or even sensitive, like hypersensitive, can be from some of these influences, either viral or other toxins. Whatever the pathogen is, it affects our brains and our bodies. Yeah.
Crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
How about you, Brenda?
The first thing I noticed, I think, was increase in energy, like major. And I feel I'm somebody who has a lot of energy anyway, so it was like noticeable for me. So that was incredible. And like I said earlier, the hip pain that I'd had for over 2 years was minimized. Like within the first few days, I would bet 90% gone. And so when I was on the cleanse, that's what I noticed. 90 to 95% of my hip pain was gone all the time. So that was incredible. And I do love chocolate, or I had loved chocolate immensely, addicted, I would definitely say. Coming off the cleanse, no more addiction, no need to go back. It's something that has lasted for me. I like chocolate and I'll have it, but I can take it or leave it. Whereas before it was like almost every day I would have some form of dark chocolate to kind of, nurture myself. And now I can take it or leave it. And it feels amazing. It's not like I'm depriving myself. I don't even want it. So that's really incredible for me. And those are probably the most. Oh, the other thing about the energy piece, when I found the expansion, or what I felt was a real increase in my energy, it seemed to create a really solid grounding container for me to do a lot of emotional work and to dive in really deep and do some of that, as Tamika would call it, the truth excavation of the deeper parts of me, of old patterns and old beliefs. And I continue to work with those every day. And it just seems to be the time. And with this support, I feel I can do it. And I am doing it. So it's great.
Woohoo! So that's why we're still smiling, guys. Yeah. I want to say one more thing is that I can travel again. I had to stop traveling because of my allergies and, being in airplanes and in all that stuff. I couldn't do it before, so it's given me that back too. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we've talked a lot about what's fascinating, but let's go into now what's for all of us is fascinating about this body of work, or even our own personal experiences. Carolyn, do you want to go first?
I do. Cheers, first off.
Oh, cheers. I guess
I love to drink water. And what I found fascinating is how much we need to stay hydrated, which a lot of us know that we need to stay hydrated, but that it affects our blood if we aren't staying hydrated, because we get thick blood. And then this leads to some of these illnesses, mystery illnesses, cancer, all sorts of illnesses, when our blood is thick. And so I hadn't realized that connection of the hydration with my blood. And what's so fascinating too is that the fruit and the vegetables and the coconut water and all of these things can help to hydrate you. So juicing, for instance, having fruit all the time, which really is a big part of this cleanse, but also just if you're following any of the medical medium information, is another way to get hydration. So I'm always drinking water and still can feel dehydrated. So it was like, oh my goodness, I'm adding the fruit and I'm having more raw vegetables and I'm having coconut water. I'm having these things that keep me even more hydrated, and that's going to help my blood, which will help to prevent illnesses. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, cilantro. Every time I go away with these beautiful souls and there was cilantro in the dishes, they'd scrape it off for me because I just couldn't stand it, the taste, the smell, any of it. And so I was always told that I have a gene that makes cilantro taste like soap, which it did to me. It was just disgusting. And so Tamika, in reading parts of the book, shared with me what he has to say about cilantro and how it can pull heavy metals from the brain. And when you have that total dislike of cilantro, is probably because you need it more than anybody because of the oxidation of the heavy metals in the brain. And so I read that and went, oh my God. So I started, as soon as we got back from Malta, on the heavy metal detox smoothie. I've done it every day, even off the cleanse that I'm home. I do it every day. And I now like cilantro. And I actually put it in my salads and not just in the smoothies. I cannot believe the difference since I think it was January, early February till now. And so the heavy metal detox is working for me. And so cilantro is on my good list now.
That is amazing. So anyone that has that aversion to it may in fact have more metals. Like we all have metals, guys, but you may have a little bit more or a certain kind, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Oxidizing at a higher rate, perhaps, which is, I think, what I read from the book.
And what's so interesting is that you did it gradually, right? Yes, so you would take like a few little pieces and put it in the smoothie, and then it got to be more, and then it was a handful, right? So I thought it was so cool to watch you. You'd be like, look at this, I'm going to try it. And it just got better and better and better to the point where you're putting it on salads. Unbelievable.
I know. Big change.
Miracles never cease.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I find most fascinating about this protocol is debunking health fads. Now, do not get mad at me if you love kombucha, but he basically says that fermented foods actually were good for people who didn't have any other way to store food. So that's how they developed in those countries and places where they were fermenting a lot of food. It was because of they would starve if they didn't have fermented food. Now, he doesn't say it's bad for you, but it may not be the be all and end all to your gut issues, which a lot of people feel it is. And he debunks that. And, I think I said to you guys, like, it would make me feel sick. And sometimes it would actually make me feel intoxicated, like a little bit drunk when I would drink it. And I was like, what is going on with this health drink? And I actually will still drink it. Sometimes we have an incredible Salt Spring Island kombucha here that I do drink sometimes for fun, but as a rarity. But now I'm not trying to get it in and thinking that it's going to cure my gut issues. So that's one of them. Nutritional yeast, as someone that's been on and off vegetarian and vegan, on and off vegan, I should say. I've been vegetarian for 25, 30 years or more, actually, since I was a kid, except I ate a bit of meat in high school. But as someone that's been vegan, that's the number one cheese substitute is nutritional yeast. And he says, and don't quote me, but it's something that it does in the brain. So turns into, I don't know, do you guys remember? It does something bad in your brain. So he doesn't recommend it. And so those kinds of fads, just oil pulling, he's saying, it doesn't do a lot. So if you like oil pulling, do that. But if you don't like it, maybe try something else. Is it really helping? It might be. And I don't know. And I'm not here to throw anything in anyone's face if they love something. But just there's a whole part of the book that is debunking health fads. And he actually also has a podcast on SoundCloud debunking health fads. So anytime everyone's doing something all of a sudden and it's not a simple thing like, eating oranges, which everyone knows what an orange is. And if it's something well, is this processed or is this, we always have to be skeptical because there will be more fads coming in the future. And
Oh, another one is a bit similar to what Brenda said about cilantro. I never really liked raw onions in my salads or in anything. And parsley, I just never really was drawn to it. And once I read about all of the benefits, like onions, if you have raw onions and you're out for a restaurant meal and you're not so sure about how it was cooked or you're just a little bit leery, make sure you eat onions because of the cleansing effects of the onions. And I was like, what? So I started to introduce it more and more and more. And now I have it in everything, because as soon as I discovered, for parsley as well, what some of the emotional, spiritual, and physical benefits were, I was like, I'm in. And now I love it.
Crazy.
So cool. So cool.
And another piece for me was the freedom. When he lays out the plan, and he's so accommodating to understand that we're all different and that we all need different things. And as you said, Tamika, we all, you can start wherever you want to start. And you don't have to throw yourself into the entire thing. You can pick a piece and just do that. Because I remember when you both started, you were on the celery juice, and I tried it and went, I don't think so. But I was right in with the heavy metal detox, and it's not like an all or nothing. It's, one day a week or one day a month or something. Just start with something to change the way that you are living, and see how it affects you, and see if it resonates for you. And then if you choose to expand it, that's wonderful. It's so you don't have to sell the farm and jump right in and do whatever it is. You can just pick those pieces that really feel right for you, and see how they change in your life, or offer you a change in your health. And so for me, it was that freedom. Like, I don't have to do it this way. It can be any way that works for me. So that was great.
So amazing. And on that note of celery, the other book that he has that I am in so love with, and all of us are, is this one, Life-Changing Foods.
Mine's all dirty from being in the kitchen.
I do a little bit. I photocopy the recipes. Carolyn's like, no, we don't have time for that, she says.
No photocopy. We just
no,
use
no,
this
no.
thing.
But yours is well worn in, so I like that.
Yes.
I like that too. It's like all of us. We're kind of worn in, like got scars and all this stuff.
Living life.
But celery was one of those things that I had become allergic to. I had become sensitive and allergic to celery and carrots. Now, he does say that for anyone with gut issues, that carrots can be harder to digest, raw carrots I'm talking about. But celery, I had become so sensitive, and I thought I was allergic then to celery because it was giving me, I was having symptoms after I would eat it, like feeling sick, or I would have asthma after it. And so this is when you can start to tweak yourself. If there are natural foods, like normal things in your life that you can no longer eat, that grow, that like the Creator gave to us, hello, that is a problem. Like, probably, some of you may be allergic. Some of you may have sensitivity. I'm not saying like go eat whatever you're allergic to. I'm not saying that, okay? But truly, if we're starting to become allergic to all kinds of natural, normal foods, it's probably because of the intense cleansing that they're doing. And that's what I realize now. So now I start every day with celery juice. And what he talks about, what he talks about in here is he lists a lot of our fruits and vegetables and talks about their dharma. So for yogis, we talk about dharma as it's our purpose for being alive. So this orange has a purpose for being alive. Like, it incarnated to help us with something. Like, it actually is a servant to us in a way. Like, that's its purpose. And I call it its dharma. And when I look now at each food as having a dharma, celery is actually simplicity. It's to teach us about simplicity and not getting so complex. There's other things too, which you can read about. But once I read about celery and I was like, oh, that's what it's here to teach me, I was transformed. And then I will tell people that I want celery juice, or that I'm having, and they're like, well, yeah, I like that, but I want to add apple and this and that and this, which is great to do. But for the maximum gut healing, the one, I would say, protocol he recommends to everyone, but you don't have to do it if you don't like it, remember that, is to start your day on an empty stomach after lemon water if you want to, but to have celery juice on an empty stomach to heal gut issues. So particularly for those of us that have gut sensitivities. And Yeah. So the celery, so I was away. I was recently in Orlando for 5 days, and I was really missing my celery. And the first week that I was on celery juice, I was almost gagging every day. And now I am completely addicted to it. What he says is that in 20 or 30 years, science will finally discover that there are over 50 salts, mineral salts, I guess, in celery that heal us. And so that's why all the attention on this one little thing. So if you're a farmer, start getting on that celery train and make it organic. Don't put chemicals and pesticides on it. Yeah, so that's my celery story.
Mm-hmm.
Carolyn, did you have another one that you wanted to talk about? Something
fascinating? No, I'm eating celery right now, so maybe Brenda could go.
Yeah, Brenda.
So for me, when I read the chapter on diabetes, because it impacts my family, I was literally, like you said, the physiological process that happens in the body and how he lays it out. It was just like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. It's not caused by what the medical community actually believes it is, and how the glucose is taken up into the cells and how the whole process works through the pancreas and all of it and the adrenals. It was fascinating to me, so much so that I bought the book for my sisters and my brother-in-law and everyone shared it around, and I just said, read this. Because the other piece of that was fruit fear. That is, he talks about that the natural health community or dietitians or whatever have scared us into not eating fruit, which is a living beautiful process that allows us to heal ourselves. And so we get away because they classify all sugars in the same category, and natural fruit sugars are not the same as high fructose corn syrup or something like that. And so for us to sit back or to read this information and see if it resonates for you and understand that, as Tamika said, the oranges and all of those fruits that are given to us by the Creator, they're here with the Dharma to help us heal. And so to find those that work for you and not be afraid to eat your fruit. I eat fruit like on every salad and in my smoothies, and I always have been a little bit of eating some fruit, but I also backed away from it because I was told that it would, make me gain weight and all of those things that I went through, in my 20s and things like that. And now it's just like, oh my God, it's so soothing and nurturing for myself and my body, and hopefully what I can share with my family so that they come back to the wholeness in eating more whole foods rather than going through other medical promises, maybe something like that. Yeah. So for me, it was huge.
One thing I'd add to that's incredible, Brenda. And when you were saying it, I was thinking about how, even with the freedom in the program, it's like if you have a day where all of a sudden you want to eat pears for lunch and that's all you're wanting to eat, then eat pears for lunch. Like it's also not like, well, you got to get this, and this. It's like, that's how nourishing the fruit is for you, is that if that's what you want for a meal, then you have that for a meal. And I was just like, something about that felt like, okay, the connection to the fruit is so nourishing, so healing. I'm in.
Because all of us have been doing the greens, I think, right? I can speak for the three of us anyway. And a lot of you out there that are practicing health practices and wellness, you're like loading up on greens, which is good. And you got to keep doing that. And we do that. But I was like you guys, and not you, Carolyn, because you were always into fruit. But I've been dieting since I was young. So I was definitely avoiding fruit, and I have not gained any weight from eating fruit. So it's debunked is what I want to say. Somebody tell us, anything I think we do just to look different or to count, even like some people still count calories. Like they're looking at calories. It's like, we have to look at the ingredients and how is it going to feed our cells, so that obviously we want to look good. We also have to feel good. You can be as skinny as anything and like not be able to get out of bed in the morning if you get one of these illnesses taking over in your body or these pathogens. So we really have to be looking at ingredients. And I'm sure that you guys that are watching this know that. So the relationship with these beings that we meet, they really are alive. Get organic whenever you can because they've had less interference. Now, a downside of this program is that organic is expensive. And I've certainly felt it in my pocketbook. So you might not be able to always get organic, but at least it gives us something. Sometimes I even go like, are they scamming us with this organic thing? I have that thought in my head. I think all of us need to be careful, but there's at least some safeguard over us having all these toxins pumping into our bodies when we buy certified organic. Now here on Salt Spring where I live, there's tons of organic food, but it's not always certified. So don't worry about certified. If you know someone that's growing food that is not putting tons of chemicals on it, that's the key, using the resources in the soil that we have. Yeah, it's kind of exciting. So in this book, it details all of the dharmas. Did I already say this, guys? That this has got all the dharmas for all the foods. And let's pick one each that we love, you guys. So if you think of this as being alive and it wants to incarnate through us, so when we ingest it and take it into our cells, it's not like we're killing an orange because it's not like it's different than killing an animal. And I'm not judging anyone that's involved in, some people out there may need meat. So do not take me as saying that because I believe we all need something different. But if this resonates with you, this is not like murdering an orange when we eat it. It has a family that it came from, in the same field or area, but, or tree, for an orange, but it's not like it's going to wilt and die and drop into the earth, which is one way it can incarnate and have its vibration continue on. But another way is for us to ingest it. And then as we live our lives, it's part of us. It becomes part of our cells. You could make that argument for meat too. It's just different because those beings, those animals there's a consciousness that's a little different there. But anyways, either way. So let's all pick one fruit or vegetable that we want to talk about its spiritual purpose or its emotional support that it gives us. Yeah. Who wants to go
do
first?
This one?
Yeah.
This is grapes. Oh, look at them all together. So the grapes emotionally are supposed to be very helpful if you feel like you need to be uplifted. Like basically if you feel emotionally broken, the grapes are something to bring in. And what's so cool about it spiritually is that the grapes grow together in bunches. And you can tell, right, when you pull a grape out that it's formed with the other grapes around it. So these are amazing to use when you're feeling isolated or lonely. These grapes remind us of community, that they grow together and that when we're eating them, we're connecting to our tribe and to our community. So this is for you guys, our tribe and our community. It's I love grapes, but to find that out to me just is mind blowing. So let me just see if I forgot anything. It'll help to point you towards your home when you're eating them because it'll help you to find your tribe if you're in that place of searching for that. And I find just eating it with my friends, I feel like, oh, we're so connected like this bunch of grapes.
I love it.
I love you.
Brenda?
All right. For me, avocados. And that's been a new discovery in the last couple of years, and I love them. So avocados are the ultimate comfort food. They're the closest thing on the planet to mother's milk. And so it's all about nurturing and taking care of yourself and feeling like you're loved. And so when you're feeling disconnected or lacking in something, eat some avocados and let them help you find your way back to your home, back to your heart. And it is all about rediscovering yourself. There was something else. Oh, yeah. It also helps with broken hearts. So if you're going through some troubling times, eat some avocado, get some guacamole maybe. But all about the nurturing aspect of life. So when you're feeling less than loved or even self-love, then eat some avocados and that'll help. They have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties as well. Really amazing for the brain, and they restore the central nervous system. So a lot of really incredible benefits in the avocado. So I love it.
I love them. Avocados are so wonderful. Well, I thought I didn't memorize it like you guys did, or not memorize it. You guys didn't,
We
but
didn't really memorize
I don't know what is good. That's okay. I thought I would pick this because this is something also that I did not eat for so many years. I was told literally by a health coach once that potatoes make you fat. And yeah. And Anthony William debunks this. You know, what you're going to just learn is that as you get into for those of you that want more and want to listen to him, is that no food actually is bad for you. It's that some foods feed the bugs inside of us. And so this is not one of them that feeds bugs. So this is actually very grounding and nurturing and also helping us find home base. But the spiritual lesson and that we get is for people who have so much to offer but remain invisible. So they feel like nobody's seeing them. They have this purpose themselves, but they're not being noticed. This is a really good food to eat. This is for anyone that feels overlooked and feels trampled on. So if you think about that, that's interesting. And they have, they grow in clusters with other potatoes. So it's like a large extended family. If you come from a small family or had a difficult upbringing, potatoes will energetically pass along the grounding sense of belonging that comes from being raised with a wide familial support network.
Wow.
This is your family, baby. Don't disown this guy, okay? And then emotional support, foundation strength. When we feel blurry, when we feel dizzy, foggy, troubled, or adrift in our lives, or if your ego is getting the best of you and it's consuming you, potatoes are humble, but they're still confident. And so they help to get us away from that negative mindset and help us feel grounded and stable. So there's lots of ways, you know, what the problem Anthony William points out with potatoes is not the potato, it's what we put on it. So, you know, you can put avocado and a homemade fresh salsa on potato and it's absolutely delicious. Or, you know, you can bake them and cut them up like French fries and put them in the oven with no oil. The reason I'm saying no oil is for any of us that are cleansing our liver. Oil is not a bad food. Even those really good oils like coconut oil and olive oil, those are good for us if you're using the oils. But stay away from canola oil. But the problem with the oil is that our liver can't process it. So you'll find if you do the 28-day cleanse is that you won't have a lot of oil. So I used to put olive oil on potatoes, but now I can just eat them the way they are, or dip them in a salsa, like a more fine salsa or something, and just roast them in the oven with nothing on them except seasonings like salt and pepper and some onion salt and garlic salt. Yum. So good. Check out Foods in My Kitchen on Instagram for a million more medical medium ideas. I watch her stories on Instagram almost every day, and they give me so much information. You would say the same, right, Carolyn?
Oh my gosh. My kids are fascinated with her because everything comes from the garden and these amazing concoctions. I'm like, how did she think of that? I love her.
She's amazing. And she also, so that's Foods in My Kitchen. And she also gives you a lot of information about the medical medium. So you also get to stay on top of more of his ideas. And so I think is there anything that we miss, women of the world?
You need the glucose from the fruits for your brain. So eat fruit.
Will make you
it's so our brain can function, right, Brenda?
Yes,
like you're saying.
Totally. It needs high quality glucose, which you only get from fruits. So.
I love it. And if you have a sugar craving, guys, and fruit doesn't cut it, like if you're trying to cleanse, you can have a teaspoon of unpasteurized. You can have a teaspoon of unpasteurized, Carolyn, unpasteurized honey, and that it actually helps kill viruses. So
and another one is this date. That's another one. Sorry, continue.
No, that's it.
Visual demonstrations.
Happening.
I didn't mean for it to take over from honey, because honey has many, many medicinal properties, but this is also super sweet and delicious, and it's a fruit, and yum.
And they're also, well, we won't tell you about all those, but listen, if you loved what we've put together today, or if this intrigues you and you want more information about different fruits or vegetables, like their spiritual or emotional lessons and information, pomegranate. If you have like, or kiwi, like whatever, or a certain kind of green or a certain other vegetable, if you're curious, like what does this give me emotionally or spiritually, then write us in the comments below and ask us, and we will give you a little bit of information. This can be really cool if you've been drawn to something. You're like, I don't know why I'm eating kiwis every day right now, or I'm just craving this. And we will write that out for you. So leave us a comment in the section below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, I have a medical medium inspired healing foods retreat on Salt Spring Island, British Columbia. That is June 21st to 28th. Space is limited for that. We do not say that all the time, but space is limited for that retreat. So get on board if you want to immerse yourself. If you're like, I'm too overwhelmed, and if you want to hear about what other people have experienced from that retreat last year, it totally has helped people really kickstart the process in their lives. Mm-hmm. So anything else, my loves?
No, just very exciting. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us today. We love you so much. We'd love to wish you well on this journey, whether you take it on a little, a medium amount, or a lot. We're here for you. Namaste.
Namaste.